Welcome to Dissertation Discourse, where learning obscure expectations can be fun. We will discuss strategies and techniques in the world of academia. Join us as we learn about ways to get your dissertation approved. Our guests include expert faculty reviewers, mentors, writing experts, and even students who have survived the process. I believe that learning should be easy to understand and fun. That's why I've created a podcast that's both informative and entertaining. This is Dr. Catherine Van Osselt. I am truly pleased to introduce one of my favorite people in the world. Dr. Megan Mahon, thank you so much for being here. I really value your time and expertise professionally. I am blown away by some of the feedback that you have given to learners throughout the iteration of our program. So thank you so much for being here. I really look forward to talking to you about dissertations in general, you sharing some of your insights, and in essence, we're just here to try to help people through the process as the goal.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know you have your doctorate degree in counselor education and supervision. Tell me a little bit about your background and how many dissertations do you think you've served on, either as mentor, chair, or on the committee?
Committee is hard. I think that's 10 plus, but probably mentor is 5. And I currently have 3, working with a lot of students at all times when it comes to dissertation. I was an English major at University of Michigan, Go Blue. And then I got my master's in mental health counseling from a small liberal arts college, so really different kind of university setting. And then my PhD from my local university, University of Toledo. It's fun to be in our program where we get to do a little bit of everything. And I would say the dissertation work has really expanded my brain and challenged me and forced me to learn a lot of new things. So
me too. That's why I wanted to put this together, is because I feel like when I reflect back on my own experience, it felt pretty lonely. And here as a doctoral student, like that actual dissertation experience was a lonely experience. And so I feel like here we have a lot of supports for people. And I thought if I could help make it smoother for others, all the better for everyone. So thanks for being
great.
Here.
Awesome. Okay. I love it.
Yeah. So I have a few guiding questions, and then I'm sure we'll go off the rails as well, which is great. The first kind of thing that I was struck by something you said in a meeting we were together once is, when you think about the dissertation process, tell me a little bit about how you picture the work that is actually involved in creating an effective dissertation research study, and how do you do this? Talk to me about the work that it's going to take for people to be successful.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot of work, not work that's insurmountable, right? So people do it every day. But I also am aware from my background and from my current life that there's a lot of people that are ABD. So for those of you that don't know, ABD is all but dissertation. You took all of your coursework, you did your internships, you did everything to complete a PhD, but didn't finish your dissertation. So while there's lots of people that complete a dissertation every year in different programs all around the world, there's a lot of people that do everything but don't finish the dissertation. Dissertation is work and it's hard, and it is a stopping point for a lot of people. And I never want it. My philosophy is I never want that to happen on my watch. I don't want that to happen to one of my students. And I guess I'm going to throw part of what I want to say is I'm going to throw it back to you for a second, because I know that you're planning on doing a big race coming up, right?
Right.
Okay. And what do you do to prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's every day, right? I have to stretch, I have to eat well, I have to have a plan, I have to follow the plan. And when I don't follow the plan, I'm not prepared for my run. And when I get off track, that's a great metaphor. When I get off track from following what I know I need to do, I'm not going to be prepared for my race.
It's going to be hard to do. What is it? You're doing 17 plus miles, or it's even
a 50K. I don't know. A 30 plus miles on trail. So it's a big deal. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It's like a dissertation.
More than it's like a dissertation. That's a dissertation, right? To me, that's a physical dissertation. So you're going to be running 30 plus miles on a trail. Unbelievable feat. And I think of that dissertation in the same way, that it's an unbelievable thing to do, right? 100 plus pages, carry out a research study, work with a group of people who all have a different opinion on what everything should look like, and be able to navigate, manage that in the system of a university, managing that system. It's a big, big job. And so just like you wouldn't go into running your 30-mile trail run or trail race without massive preparation, how long does it take for you to prepare for something like that? Months
Well,
and months?
approximately a year.
A year. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. 9
So
months. Plus I've been running before that. So a year.
yeah, and a year and even years beyond that, because you were doing work all along the way to stay healthy and, take care of yourself. And so I try to tell students kind of in that similar vein of like your dissertation is like a marathon. It's like a big, big race at the end of a long few years of work. And so you're a little bit tired actually when you start it sometimes, and you're a little burned out and you're a little ready to be done, but you're not. And you have a long, hard, race ahead of you. And so all along the way, I ask students to think about that, getting to that point and what they need to do to be ready, to be strong, to be in the best shape possible, to be able to write like that and to be able to research and read and to have some energy to negotiate all those different barriers that inevitably come up. I mean, no one that I've ever seen or worked with has had an easy dissertation. I don't think that exists, and I don't think it should exist. Being as prepared as you can, I think, is one of the keys to success. But that means you have to be diligently all along the way, looking at that big race ahead of you and thinking, what do I need to do now to prepare? That's the work of it, I think, is like thinking, okay, that's a big, big job. How can I get myself as physically, as mentally prepared, as academically prepared as I can be so that I can be successful in that endeavor? Knowing that there are many, many people who get to that point and just aren't able to do it. I mean, I had peers that I was in class with that to this day don't have their PhD because they couldn't.
Well, statistically, right. More people don't finish it because it does take an inner fortitude and an inner persistence that you have to do it on your own, and you have to figure it out on your own. And you are working to meet multiple viewpoints and expectations. That's also challenging.
Very challenging. Yeah. That's the work of it. And so if you're not exercising all along the way, I think it's going to be really hard to do. Not impossible, but just really hard. I tell students this all the time. I really think getting a PhD and finishing that last leg of it is really it's less about smarts, being, the smartest person in the room or knowing a lot of stuff about research or theory or being a great writer. I think it's more about persistence, just being persistent, sticking with a plan, working hard at it, setting a schedule, holding yourself accountable. And those are hard things to do. It's hard.
It's interesting. It makes me think about ultra marathons, ABD, all but dissertation. In races, there's something called did not finish, DNF.
Oh.
And they've done some research around what are all the reasons people say that they did not finish. And so anything that's an ultra marathon is over 20 miles. It's usually in the trails or on the mountains. And so people list all these different reasons, like I had blisters, or I didn't have the right nutrition, or I felt nauseous, or it was too hot, or it was too cold, or it was too rainy, or it was too wet. But no one ever says I wasn't prepared to finish.
Wow. Fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's you weren't prepared. And so maybe by, I don't know, doing little things like listening to podcasts about dissertations, what kinds of things can you do to better prepare yourself to be successful and make a plan, a production plan for your dissertation to be successful. So thank you. I appreciate those.
That's very interesting. And I would listen to that podcast if you do one on what to do. I mean, I have some thoughts on that, but it would be interesting to collect some different perspectives on that preparation aspect.
Yeah.
And to survey people that are ABD. I mean, and see what happened. What do they think?
What do they say? Do they say I didn't have the right mentor? I didn't have that's like I had blisters. It was too hot. It was too cold. My committee members could never agree. My university was too strict. It was too hot. Yeah, that's really, okay. There's a topic for someone.
And there's a research study right there. I'll do that.
Absolutely.
I'd
Absolutely.
like to know more about that. It's heart-wrenching really to ever see a student fail. And not be able to make it through this process. And it's very much, I always think of so many parallels to the counseling process when you're a mentor. Like, it's really got this work that you have to do, right? So when clients come in, I can't push them and pull them through counseling. They've got to be willing to be ready to do the work. It's hard work. It's difficult. They might not always like me. And so I see a very parallel process then to that mentor-mentee, that relationship of, I'm here for you. I can show you what some options are. I can give you some guidance, but really in the end, it's work that you have to do on your own, and I can't do it for you.
Yeah.
But it is hard to stand by someone's side and then see them not be able to complete something like this.
Yeah. Because we don't want that intrinsically.
No.
I think as educators, that's not, and as counselors, I mean, that dual
Right.
identity among us, I think inherently means we want people to be successful and we think we can get them there, but at the end of the day, it's up to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Can I ask you some specific questions about your other
Sure.
thoughts about, so there's one thing that I really feel like on all the committees I hear from, people will say, improve your scholarly tone. Give it to me. What are your thoughts on that one?
Gosh. And it's funny. I haven't really thought exactly about what that means. I know what it means, but I don't know if I can articulate it very well right now. I'll try. One of the things I think scholarly tone means is supporting your discussion with frequent references to professional literature. That to me, that's scholarly tone. So we don't just speak about things we know or we learn somewhere, we don't know where. I mean, I tell students on a very basic level, like every paragraph should have a citation. It's really a lot more than that in a dissertation. I mean, that would just be the foundational, and then you build upon that foundation. That's part of scholarly tone. I think scholarly tone, at least for us in the work that we do, is using APA formatting and using it properly. That's part of our scholarly tone for our, program, for our field. So that's part of what I mean when I say, improve your scholarly tone or strengthen your scholarly tone is work on your APA, work on your paragraph development. I see a lot of students that will submit work that they have like a 1 or 2 sentence paragraph. That's not a paragraph. Paragraphs kind of have like, an ebb and a flow, an arc. And so again, at the very bare minimum, foundational basic skills, I say a paragraph should be like 3 sentences long. It really should probably be more than that, but that would be like the minimum I would expect to see a paragraph.
Well, and I think APA, it's like a minimum of 2 sentences, right? There's even rules around APA. They say you can't have a paragraph be less than 2 sentences.
Then less than 2.
So
even, I mean, you can read a 2 sentence paragraph and it just doesn't feel like there's much there, much substance. Right. And I don't think it's like a good writing habit necessarily. My rule of thumb is 3. I know APA and I sometimes disagree on things, but so that's part of what I mean when academic tone to me is paragraph development, having transitions, having structure and support through use of headings and subheadings. I could probably keep going on and on. Grammar, proper grammar.
Yeah.
So those are all things I mean, but also it's part of it is knowing where to put things. Write a sentence, and then at the end of it say, according to Smith and Smith. Well, really that according to Smith and Smith should be at the front of the sentence. So some of it is also not just paragraph development, but sentence development. Knowing how to construct a sentence where it will flow well for your reader, and your reader's not going to be tripping over things as they're reading.
Yeah, I remember getting some feedback on my dissertation about subject-verb agreement, and I had to learn and teach myself subject-verb agreement. I didn't even know what that was, and then really learning about active voice versus passive voice.
There you go.
And I think about this is to go back to the metaphor around exercise, because I think sometimes when you're given information, maybe you need to get multiple resources until you figure out find one that clicks for you. Specifically, what I mean, I was trying to do push-ups and I kept hurting myself in different ways, right? So I went and watched about 10 different videos on how to do a proper push-up. And one finally clicked for me that it made sense. And I was like, oh, I understand it now.
Yeah, got it.
So maybe with passive active voice or with transitional sentences, maybe look at YouTube or look at different resources around, or read different, like even read what does APA tell you around transitional sentences, and find the one that clicks for you where it really sinks. And then you go, oh, okay, I got it. So that's just a little tip or idea. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a really good tip. I mean, I encourage students. I mean, every university now has some kind of a writing center or some kind of an academic center where they will help you improve your writing. I don't know a university that doesn't have writing resources for students. I've never encountered a university that doesn't. And students should be utilizing those services. Their tuition dollars are paying for people to be in that department waiting to help them. I tell our students, please use that from the get-go. Schedule weekly or bi-weekly appointments with those people and sit and take in paragraph by paragraph and work on it, because you will get better. But if you don't work on something, you won't get better. You won't get stronger if you're not actively working on it. If you're not, whatever it is, watching videos or reading about it or, somehow trying to learn some new skills and then apply those skills to what you're doing, then it's going to be harder to get better at something. And I would say if you ask me what I do for a living, just, without a title, I would say I read and write for a living. I read, I write, I read, I write all day long, every single day. And I was an English major in college many, many years ago. And I've been reading and writing ever since then. And I would not call myself a great writer. I'm good. I'm pretty good, but I'm not great. And I still have to work on it. And I still have to keep learning and pushing myself. I still have to pull open that APA book and look up a rule, even though I've been writing an APA for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So
I agree.
It's a never ending process. But if I was getting ready for a big race, then I would even be more invested in learning and developing those skills.
I was thinking about that in my master's program. We actually were assigned to read through the APA publication manual. And I did. And lots of it wasn't relevant, especially at the master's program, but that was that preparation. I had to read through Strunk and White, right? The book on grammar, but I actually read it. So that's that preparation. Those are good points. Wow, who knew that was going to be a whole theme?
Right. Well, I mean, it's really how I conceptualize this, truly. And I tell students it all the time. If you're not training for this race at the end, it's going to be a really hard thing to do. Yeah. Not that you can't, not that I haven't seen students struggle through it. I guess another part of this for me personally is the financial piece. I know that's probably not what you plan on talking about today, but
that's real.
In debt. I don't like people accumulating debt. I don't like people living in debt. It's a stressor. It's an albatross. Educational debt, it's unlikely that it's going to go away, right? And that there's going to be some way it's going to get erased. And for someone to linger in a dissertation process, paying money every quarter or every semester to stay there, it worries me. Just as on the flip side, on the end of it, when those student loans payments start coming, what impact that will have on your life, on your happiness, on your wellness, on your well-being, whatever, on your finances. And so, if you can be stronger, more prepared, ready for the race, it won't be as hard. Maybe it won't take you as long. I mean, I have seen people complete dissertations in under a year. It's possible.
I have too, but they were ready and they wanted it and they dedicated a lot of time. I agree. I think, what this really makes me think about is it's the why. You have to know, why do you really want it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you want it just for the title, that's probably not enough. And so the earlier you can figure that out might be the better.
Great point too. Underlying motivation for why are you doing this? Why are you here? What do you want to do with this degree? It was helpful for me as well. I know one of my motivators is I had a job waiting for me, and my job was dependent on me finishing my dissertation. So I just had to finish it.
That's a good motivator.
I was hired as a professor, but on the condition that my dissertation was done by a certain date. So I was like, I've got to finish that thing. So
I think that's true for a lot of people.
On the other side of the degree that you can look forward to is a motivator as well. Like, if I finish this, I can get this job, or I can, whatever it is,
better my community or whatever it might be. Yeah. Great. All right. I have a couple other questions that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. Well, I have some specific questions maybe about chapter 3. Did you want to thread in some thoughts that you had specific to dissertation, or can I ask these prompts?
I know I had a couple thoughts on it. I mean, one of the things just from my chapter 3 work with students is that, and this is again something I've noticed at a few universities, and so I would say check it out. It's worth checking out at whatever university you're at, is checking with your IRB prior to writing up your proposal, prior to writing, your chapter 3, and see what the IRB at your university, what the expectations are, what they're looking for. Maybe not all universities would set up a meeting with you, but like universities like ours, you are able to set up a meeting at any point in time with your IRB and run through things, talk through things with a consultant. That's an amazing opportunity. Talk about a way to save time. I encourage all my students, hey, this is a service you're paying for. People are there waiting to speak with you, to help you. And if your university doesn't have something like that where you can meet with an IRB consultant to go over your plans and your ideas, then at least check out the website for your university and see if there are any resources there. A lot of times they also want you to be successful. They want to set you up for success. Sometimes everything that you need to know is right there waiting for you. It's just accessing that resource. So that's one thing that comes to mind when I think of chapter 3 is looking around and seeing what's available to you before you go through some kind of big struggle trying to dig around and find it. It might just like our IRB has most of the information students need right there on their webpage.
Yeah. And they know it to a different level. I mean, I've chaired 15 different dissertations, and with IRBs, those nuances, they just know that level of critique in such a strong way that I also, do the IRB consult if available, or certainly go through the website.
Go through the website, see what their expectations are, what the kinds of things that they might be looking for. Wow, 15. That is amazing.
Yes.
That is amazing. What's your success rate? No, that's okay.
100%. But
wow.
But with each one, I learn differently, and it's been interesting for me. Every single different committee member that I have worked with, or school reviewer, everybody brings a different strength.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has something different that they are really good at, and it's been a learning process for me too.
Yeah, I learned from every dissertation I'm on. One thing that was helpful that you've done, and I ask people to do, is send me the feedback from the other reviewers, because I learn from other people's feedback. So when another reviewer looks at the same thing I looked at, I love to see what they found that I might have not noticed, or it's part of my learning process. How I get better at doing this is
me too.
How other people are thinking about something, looking at something. Because we all do definitely have our strengths, and we all look at things a little bit differently, or focus in on different things. So,
well, and that's sort of why I wanted to speak with you too, is that there were some things I noticed, like when you reviewed one of my mentees, and you spoke specifically, it was about population and sample. I really liked how you specifically went to a resource. Do you remember the KCREP resource you sent them to?
Yeah, KCREP Vital Statistics. Yeah.
That was so helpful.
Yeah, KCREP collects information, and so that is useful information. I mean, your state board collects information on licensees. So if you're surveying counselors, to me, would be a logical place to go. If you got to describe your population comprehensively, and then you describe your sample. Say your population is counselors, but I want to look at counselors in my state of Ohio, where I live. Well, so I might look at KCREP to get some information on counselors. I might look at the BLS website, the government website that kind of collects information on people's jobs. But then that would help me describe my population as kind of those bigger sources. But then I might then reach out to my state board and collect some local information to help describe my sample. Usually when I'm helping students with that part of their chapter 3, I mean, the more specific information you can give, the better. So if you're describing your population of licensed counselors, sometimes I tell students, write like it's someone who's reading this that doesn't know what a counselor is. Where do they work? What do they do? What's their educational level? How many, on average, how many men, how many women? What's the, ethnic, what's our diversity looking like in the counselor population? And so as deep of a dive you can do to fully describe and comprehensively describe your population can help your reader get a real good sense of who it is that you're talking to, who it is that you're researching. And then from there, your chapter 3 really then starts to kind of funnel down to your ideal participant. Who's the exact right person that I want to talk to? So it takes you from population here, sample, inclusion, exclusion criteria, and then if you got your ideal person that you want to be reaching out to.
That's so fantastic, because I feel like a lot of times historically it was just sort of, you were asking your sample questions that typically around gender, race, ethnicity, and now you really aren't supposed to ask those questions unless it's truly relevant to your research study. And so, but it's still nice to be able to have in general, who is this population, regardless of the actual individual person that I maybe interviewed or that I had take my quantitative assessment.
Yes. And that's a great point, because that's something I write on students' papers a lot. Like they'll come up with their demographic data sheet, or, the first kind of survey they want to send out to collect information on their participant. And a lot of times I'll write, is this really necessary? Do you really need to know this to answer your research question? Is this going to be information that you need to collect from this person? Because if it's not, you need to take it out. It still doesn't mean that we don't want to know some of that information about the population as a whole.
Absolutely. Like years of experience.
Right. Average age is interesting to know. Average years of experience. If we're talking about a lot of the students that I work with have looked at counselor supervisors. So that's looking at now a whole nother aspect. What does it take to be a supervisor? What do counselor supervisors do? Okay, now if you're looking specifically again at your state, what does it take to get a supervisory endorsement in that state? Kind of picking those pieces apart and describing them for your reader. And always assuming, I write this over and over and over again, always assume your reader knows nothing. Just assume that the person on the other end that's reading this doesn't know anything about anything. Write it like you're writing to your friend who's not a counselor, who's not in our realm, who is going to learn from you. And so how would you describe something to that person? Because that's really how you should write your dissertation. Defining all terms, describing things, and it might seemingly be kind of elementary, because you might be writing things like, oh, I mean, I know that my mentor knows this, but don't really write to your mentor necessarily.
That's a really great way to think about that, especially when you were writing about the procedure, the procedural steps that you take,
right.
The level of detail and precision, just thinking about this is someone who does not know your field at all. I think that's a really great tip for people.
Yeah. And the idea behind procedures is that someone could pick it up and recreate your study. You've written in such detail and it's been so specific that I could pick up your procedures section and I could replicate your study by following your step-by-step description of what you did to start your research study, to collect your participants, collect data, analyze your data. Every step is so well described I could reenact your study entirely.
That's
really
great.
But that takes work. I mean, writing like you're writing to someone who's never read about this topic it does feel a little bit weird to write like that, and it is a little bit cumbersome to write like that, because you write and then you have to keep writing because it's this level of detail takes time and energy to, like, you write, you think you have it all, and then you realize you skipped something. Like, I'll have students say I sent out a survey. I'll say, well, how did you send it out? Did you send it via SurveyMonkey? Did you use a Google form? So that level of specificity is required. But by doing that, and this is where I think people don't, something they don't realize, and not just with a dissertation, even when they're writing like a research paper for us. By doing that, you're telling your reader, I know this topic so well. I can describe it this comprehensively in this much detail, giving you these definitions for everything. And that's how well I understand it. And so your reader then has a confidence about your knowledge base in this area.
Is there something that when you pick up a dissertation and you read chapter 1 and you go, oh, I know this is going to be a great design?
Ooh, simple. A simple design is a great design for a dissertation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clean, like when everything aligns, right? It feels straight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, straightforward and simple is always good. The best dissertation is a simple dissertation that can be done in a relatively quick amount of time. And, I think we have lovely, ambitious people that we work with that want to do something that, like, they're passionate about, or they've encountered in their life or their work. They want to do something big, change the world, whatever it is. And I'm like, not for your dissertation. Don't do that for your dissertation. It shouldn't be your life's work, because you don't want to work on it more than this amount of time. So you can get
12 months.
Go do your
12
life's
months.
work. 12 months.
Yeah.
I think the best dissertations I see are ones that are pretty straightforward and simple.
Yeah, I agree.
They do not need to be complicated. And in fact, I don't think they should be complicated. It just needs to, it's really a demonstration of your ability that you understand research concepts well enough that you can apply them to a research project, and then you can write about it. So keep that simple.
That's helpful. That's helpful. All right, Dr. Mahon, I don't want to take up too much of your time, although I could sit here longer. Any other thoughts or insights specific to dissertations that you would like to share?
I have a lot probably to say, except I think that just that persistence is the key. Persistence is the key. Keeping at it, and you'll have setbacks. So plan on them. Plan on a setback. Know that will happen. You'll have a bad weekend. You'll have a bad, something will happen in your life that is a setback, and that's okay, and that's normal. But what are you going to do then to get back on track? And then kind of what you said earlier is devoting time. I mean, making sure that you have some time and space in your life. A dissertation is not just going to materialize. So you do have to strategically set out some time and some space and some energy. Set that aside and be prepared to use that towards a dissertation. You're going to have to make priorities, and the dissertation, to get it done, is going to need to be kind of higher up on your list of priorities for, like you said, hopefully 12 months. I mean, you could do it. People do it all the time in 12 months or less. It takes preparation work and devotion to do that, but it's very possible. And I'd like to see
possible.
do that. I mean, I think that'd be ideal if that was kind of the norm. It'd be wonderful.
I think it always takes, I think interestingly, it takes, dependent on how prepared you are at the starting line. But I think the amount of time it takes to finish is the same. It's how do you prioritize that time?
Yes.
Are you dragging it out? Are you avoiding, or are you just every day 1 hour, or every week 4 hours of concentrated time? But you do have to schedule that time.
Well, I guess if we're talking about time, I'll say one more thing. I think there are times when you're doing a dissertation to move, and there are times to slow down.
Yes.
And when students are moving too fast at certain points, you're going to then be forced to slow down.
Yes. You're going to hurt your knee.
I think I've seen happen to people time and time again, especially when it comes to qualitative research. They didn't take time in the beginning to make sure they've set up their
interview questions
well, good questions, tested them, made sure those questions are going to give you a robust discussion with someone, number one. Number two, they didn't set up their technology well and test it multiple times to make sure that they were recording right, that like if you're using Zoom, you can get a transcription in Zoom. So you won't have to hire a transcription service or anything like that after the fact. But it takes time to set that up, make sure you have it working properly, making sure you have things saved in a couple different locations in case your computer crashes. And to me, and I know we can't ask students to invest any more than they already have, especially financially most of the time. But I would say we're having functional and reliable technology is at this stage of the game is kind of essential. It's kind of essential. So, slowing down and making sure those pieces are in place and you have things in the right order before you sit down and talk to 10 plus people for an hour. When I see students race through that and get to the other end and then have some kind of big malfunction or problem, or their interviews weren't good, robust, something like that, and they have to go back and redo it. And I'm like, oh man, I wish you had just slowed down for a second before you jumped into all that. So, I think knowing and having a mentor where you can talk about these things with, and someone who's has some experience so they can say, hey, I've seen this happen to students. Let's slow down here, thoughtfully go through this part of the process. So it's kind of one of those weird experiences where you want students to move quickly and you want them to be moving but you also want them to slow down and be thoughtful and be careful so that they don't have to go back and redo things.
Yeah. Even like big picture timing, like if you're planning to do all of your interviews around the holidays, might not be the best time to get your interviews done for you and for your interviewees. Or if your first interview is 15 minutes, what are you going to do? You got to course correct right away rather than just like, I'm just going to do all the rest of the interviews.
Right.
Then you're going to have to redo them all.
Yeah, you'll have to redo them all. Right.
Yeah. So those are great.
Yeah, that's where I think, it is nice to connect with other people, whether it's your mentor or peers in your program or other professors that are in your department, but connecting with people, talking a little bit about this process. I mean, I always welcome my CES students, so my counselor education and supervision doc students. Like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it before you're even in this process. Let's talk about the process. Let's talk about what this looks like. Let's talk about pitfalls that students can fall into so that you can hopefully avoid them. So I think just that communication piece, and asking questions, all of that can help save you some of those troubles.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been priceless.
So fun.
Really, so fantastic. So as I close and you shared your final thoughts, I'm curious, are you listening to any great podcasts right now? What's giving you joy right now?
Your podcast. I'll start listening to yours.
Okay. Thank you so much for your insights and expertise. I truly appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Leave a comment if this was a helpful review and give me your tips. I know that you're busy and wanting to earn your PhD is a lofty and rigorous goal. A few minutes with this podcast will save you time. Stay tuned to Dissertation Discourse, where learning obscure expectations can be fun.